Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so you can become who you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Amberly Lago. Amberly is a former pro dancer and fitness trainer. Her life changed in an instant after a near-fatal motorcycle accident. 34 surgeries and a diagnosis of complex regional pain syndrome later, she had every reason to give up, but she didn't. Instead, she turned her pain into purpose, becoming a leading voice on grit, perseverance, and personal growth. Amberly is the best-selling author of True Grit and Grace and her new book, Joy Through the Journey, as well as host of the Amberly Lago Show, where she helps people overcome setbacks and step into their power. Her story has inspired millions, and today she's here to inspire you. Get ready for a conversation on resilience, mindset, and what it really takes to turn adversity into strength. Amberly Lago, welcome to the Blueprint Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. We've already started talking before we started recording, and I'm like, oh, so awesome to get to talk with you. So thank you.
Yeah, that's always a common thing where we start talking and then I don't hit the record button until we're ready to record. And like some of that is some of the best stuff because it's the most human part of who we are. We've never met before, but we're sharing pieces of our experience and finding some commonalities in our own past experiences, which we'll dive into a little bit more here today as well. You've had such an interesting life and there's been so many different challenges in your life. The one thing that we know, especially from my service as a police officer, is that life does change in an instant. Take us back to that day in 2010. What do you remember, not just about the accident itself, but the first thoughts you had when you woke up in the hospital and realized what happened?
Thank you. It's pretty crazy. First of all, thank you so much for your service. My husband's a former cop. He was lieutenant commander. And so I had so much respect and admiration for you and for all those who serve. So thank you.
Thank you.
And when I woke up out of a coma, this is crazy to think, but one of the first things I did, well, I take that back. The first thing I did, you wake up out of a coma and you've got like Vaseline on your eyes, you've got a tube going down your throat, so you can't talk. Like, and the first thing I did, I guess I'm a fighter. When I woke up out of a coma, I started trying to rip the tube out of my mouth. And I just remember a nurse coming over and saying, "Oh no, honey, don't do that." And I was waving my arms around and she said, "I think she's trying to talk." I was like, actually, no, I was trying to breathe because my sweet husband, with tears in his eyes, was leaning over me and he was crushing the tubes that supplied air to me and I couldn't breathe. And so they brought me the pad and a pen over. And the first thing I wrote was, "Get off my tubes." You would think I would write, "Oh, I love you, honey," or "How long have I been in a coma?" The first thing I wrote was, "Get off my tubes." And and he jumped back.
Oh my goodness.
And the next thing I wrote was, "Don't tell Savannah." Now, Savannah was my oldest daughter, and she was on a trip for school in New York. And little did I know, she was already back from her trip. And of course, she already knew that I was in the hospital in a coma fighting for my life. But when you're in a coma, it's like a blink. You're out, and it's like you just want us to nod it off for a minute. I'd been out for a little over a week. And then one of the first things I did was I actually asked for my phone. And I was texting clients and calling clients pretty drugged up and assuring them, "Hey, I might be in ICU right now, but I'm getting out of here in third quarter. We are going to finish strong." I had no idea that I was gonna be in the hospital for months, that the next thing I learned was they were gonna amputate my leg. They said, "You've got a 1% chance of saving your leg. Like a war wound, there's really nothing we can do for you." Now, when I was in a coma, they were just gonna go ahead and amputate it, and my husband was like, "You are not gonna amputate her leg. I want her to wake up out of a coma and have both of her legs. I want that to be her decision." And so he started calling in doctors and favors and had so many connections. And we had a really good friend of ours who's an incredible doctor. And he had a friend at a different hospital who is a trauma doctor who specializes in only like really crazy intense cases, and he was the only doctor that we could find that was willing to work to try to save my leg, and so it really took an act of God, and thanks to my husband saying, "You're not touching her," we finally got transferred to a different hospital where they did surgery after surgery, 34 in total,
34.
and they saved my leg.
That's incredible. Now, what your husband looked up was limb salvage.
Yeah. He knew that terminology from the type of work that he did. He was used to pulling up on horrific accidents. In fact, he got a Medal of Valor because he was the first one on scene when we had the big train wreck out here, or I say out here in California. I'm in Texas now. But when I was in California, we had a really bad train wreck, and he was the first one there, and so he got a Medal of Valor, so he was used to seeing horrific things, but I had never seen him cry, and he's a big, strong, tough guy.
It hits different when it's one of your own.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure. Now, right now, people are like, did we skip a chapter? What was it? What was it exactly that happened? Let's walk people through that.
Yeah, I was in the fitness industry for 26 years, and before that, I was a professional dancer, so my whole life, it was all about being an athlete and being active, and that was what I loved to do, and I had a big business where I employed several other trainers, and I taught trainers how to become certified and run a training business, and that all changed in the blink of an eye. I was on my way home. It was a beautiful, sunny California day. It was a holiday weekend, and I was only cruising along about 20, 25 miles an hour and on Ventura Boulevard, and I had a SUV. I was in a hurry and shot out of a parking lot, and there was nothing I could do except for just let off the clutch and try to jump off my bike, and it was too late. They T-boned me, and I was thrown 30 feet, and when I came to a stop, I looked down at my leg, and I only looked down once because it's crazy to look down and see your body completely just crumbled into pieces. I didn't let go of my leg because I honestly thought it was gonna fall off, and there was blood everywhere. I didn't know at the time that it was because my femoral artery was severed, and thank goodness, I no one was running over to me. They were all looking at me. There was one lady that actually even fainted when she saw me, and thank goodness there was this one guy, and I to this day, I still don't know who he is, but he ran over and he took his belt off and he made a tourniquet around my leg, and he really saved my life. And the paramedics were down the street at the Coffee Bean sitting outside. They heard the accident. They started running towards me before they even got the call. So I feel like I was very fortunate, very lucky that everything was in place. The paramedics there were there on the scene fast. I had this guy who made a tourniquet on my leg, and thank God I was in a hospital where there happened to be Dr. Jabor, who is a specialist. He just happened to be on call, and he is like top-notch doctor, and he's the one who was able he's a vascular surgeon, and he's the one who was able to put my femoral artery back together and basically save my leg. And so everything just I feel like were little God moments where
I was just going to say, it's all divine intervention every step of the way.
yeah.
It's incredible. Now, with those 34 surgeries and the real possibility of amputation, most people, they just would have given up. What was the moment where you had to decide between surrendering to the pain or fighting for your future?
It was so different in the hospital because it was one day at a time. It was just like, what can I do today to make sure that I get through tomorrow's surgery and they don't amputate my leg? What can I do today to get through this pain in the moment? What can I do to get through the day of the emotional just pain and almost grieving that I felt because I would look down at my leg that was held together with these metal bars, and I would just look down and think I was spiraling down into a depression actually, because I was just having thought like, what if I do get an infection and they have to amputate? What if they have to amputate because the bone's dying? Because there was a real chance of if they didn't get the surgeries done properly and fast enough that my leg would start to die because the bone would die.
Yeah.
And there was a real chance of infection. Like I had big signs outside my door. No one could come and see me. I had to check my blood often if my sugar level, if you read your blood and the sugar was over 125, then they were going to have to give me insulin. So I did everything that I could to ensure that my blood sugar levels didn't get high because I didn't want to get an infection. I wanted to decrease my risk of infection. So I was monitoring everything that I ate, everything that I thought about. And what helped me with that the most was I had to think about what I could do and what I did have instead of what I couldn't do and what I didn't have. And gratitude is what did that for me because it was instant shift in perspective when I could focus on what I was grateful for. It really allowed me to go, oh my goodness, I'm still alive. I can breathe. I can't go outside, but I have a beautiful view of the window. I've got these amazing nurses. I've got friends and family and all my clients that are coming in to see me. And so when I focused on those things, it really allowed me to get through even times of pain. But the pain was so severe when they would come in. So my leg was completely open. And this sounds crazy, but being in the fitness industry and always being fascinated biology and physiology, I would actually look down at my leg and I'd be like, oh, wow, I can see the actual gastrocnemius and I can see the soleus. And I was like, looking at the striations of the muscle on the inside of my leg because I had
Yeah.
compartment syndrome. The front of my leg was completely blown open. I was missing pieces of my bone. And I looked down at it with curiosity. But then the nurses would have to come in and switch the bandages every 3 hours. And they would lift my leg up, and it felt like my leg was being basically rebroken again because it was in pieces. And they would change these bandages, and I could not control the screams that would come out of my mouth. The pain was so severe. And I would just squeeze the bed rails, and my husband couldn't even be in the room.
Yeah.
And in those moments, I would just pray. And there is power in prayer. And I would pray. I would try to focus on the good as hard as it was. And that is what helped me get through those moments. And still to this day, it's not like I don't have that kind of pain, but I still have pain. And even right now, I don't know what I did. I think I did something. I'm fortunate enough, blessed enough that I get to travel. And I just was on a trip and the suitcase fell on my foot, the foot that was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, which is an incurable nerve disease. And this nerve disease is baffling. It's where it's what really it's been the hardest part. I would rather go through 34 more surgeries and not have to deal with this nerve pain for the rest of my life than I would to deal with this nerve pain. And I dropped a suitcase on my foot and it's been flared up a little bit different lately. It's been a lot of pain. And every day I wake up, sometimes the pain wakes me up in the middle of the night. And the first thing I do is I think about, okay, I'm grateful I'm not stuck in a hospital bed and I can get up and use the bathroom on my own. I don't have to use a bedpan. I'm alive and I can walk. It's not pretty and I'm walking like a 100-year-old cowboy right now, but I can walk. I get to be here with you today. I get to have so many opportunities. I get to work with clients today. And so the minute I start focusing on gratitude, it is the quickest and easiest way to shift your perspective. It is alchemy. And then I will tell you, I'll be really honest with you. So we have a new puppy and we're puppy training. So
Mhm.
we've taken all of our carpet out and we had this big cozy rug in the living room. And every morning I wake up and I get on my knees and I pray because it reminds me how small I am and how big God is. And this morning, I have to keep it real with you. I was like, okay, I get on my knees and pray. And I'm like, but oh gosh, I'm hurting and the carpet's gone. I got to get down on the hardwood floor. And I was like, Amberly, Jesus was nailed up on the cross. I think you can get on your knees and be in a little bit of pain right now to get on your knees and pray. And so I did. And so I start my day with rituals like that. And I start my day in that way with intention. No matter how busy my day is, I think it's so important to get grounded in whatever faith you have or whatever higher power that you have. I call my higher power God and a practice of gratitude. And I say practice because I know sometimes when you're going through an authentic catastrophe, or a huge challenge, it might be hard, but there's always something to be grateful for. And I promise it does change the way you feel about your circumstances.
Man, you just gave us so much in that short period of time. I want to go back and acknowledge the screams because what your husband experienced was every other scream that he's ever heard at the same time. And taking that on from your loved one at the same time is overwhelming to the nervous system. What an incredible experience that is, and so challenging. It's not a lack. I know some people might hear that and be like, we should have been there for you.
He was there twice a day, every day, twice a
Absolutely.
day, every day.
That just it shows just the incredible spirit and strength that he really has. I think that's just absolutely amazing, and we have to acknowledge that. Now, the other thing that you mentioned was gratitude. I've often seen gratitude as the pathway to joy, which intersects nicely with your new book. I was hoping that you could tell us a little bit more about your book and what that's going to be about. It's already out, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hot. And you know what? Thank you for asking. Yesterday, I moved to Texas, and one of the reasons I moved here was I wanted to be closer to my grandmother. And so she actually still lives about an hour and 15 minutes away. It's quite a drive, but it's worth it every time I get to go drive and go over and see her. And it's this little bitty town. There's 620 people that live in this town. And it's the tiniest church service. There's 10 people in church. And there's one cafe, one restaurant. That's the only thing open on Sunday. And so we'll often go to church and then go to eat at this cafe that has the most delicious food in Roxton, Texas. If you're ever in Roxton, Texas, I really recommend this place. But I walk in and it's a small town, and this lady comes up to me and she was like, "Amberly, I've been reading your book. I love it." And I'm not expecting this at all. I'm not expecting to see anybody or know anybody that knows me. And especially in this small town in the middle of nowhere in Texas. And she said, "I think I like this book better than your first one." And I was like, "Really? Thank you so much." Because as an author, I had to take myself out of it. This is not for me. This is for the people that I get to serve. But I'm going to be honest with you. I was like, oh, what if people don't like it? What if it's not as good as the first book? But it has been on my heart to write this book because it's something that I was always a very joyous person. And being diagnosed with an incurable nerve disease and told I'd be wheelchair bound forever and be in constant pain the rest of my life, I was like, that's just not the vision I have for me. I don't want to give up on my dreams. And I was told I'd never work again, never walk again. And I was like, no, I'm going to work again and I am going to walk again. And I did. But then I went down a road of just all grit and hustle. And I started to lose that spark of joy. And I decided, you know what? I need to get the joy back. And so there's something I practice. It's fault. Never get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And I had to stop and ask myself, okay, I need to halt. I need to get back to basics. And when I say basics, drinking enough water, practicing my gratitude, going to my 12-step recovery meetings because this nerve disease drove me to drinking to try to cope with the pain. And I got sober in 2016, moving my body, reaching out and asking how I can be of service, just taking time to be in nature. And I asked myself, what brings me joy? And I think it's important to have a joy ritual, do things. And for me, it can be as simple as music. Like I rock out to gospel music on the way to the gym and AC/DC or Eminem when I get in the gym. So like whatever brings you joy, it could be Kisses from your dog. I'm loving my new little nugget puppy that's gives good kisses and being out in nature. And so I decided to write this book as it's more of a self-help book, believe it or not. And I'm no guru, I'm no therapist, I'm no expert. I'm just somebody who has been down a dark path and come out the other way and been able to spark joy in my life despite really hard circumstances, despite being hitting rock bottom or a roadblock again and again, despite falling and having to get back up. I have found that pain and joy can coexist, and you can choose to build upon the joy. And it's not waiting for the perfect circumstances. It's really embracing the present moment and being in gratitude and having a life of purpose to spark more joy.
I love that. Joy is one of those things that has eluded me for most of my life. And I know that sounds sad at first, but if you don't experience it or observe other people that are going through it themselves, then you don't know exactly what that is or how to interpret it or to feel that or to wire it into your own nervous system. I've had to go through that path of retroactive joy where you look back on these past experiences where you had some accolades and some things that went well in your life because, oh, we don't deserve those things, right? That's not meant for you. You can't have that. We have all these core limiting beliefs surrounding joy. So you go back to, I got my master's degree at 40, and it's, yeah, so what? And so I had to go back and say, no, it's not so what. There were so many things that had to lead up to getting that master's degree. I was able to go back and wire that into my nervous system of, yes, I accomplished this. It was difficult. I did hard things. I did it during a time period where I was working all this overtime and taking time off and traveling 2.5 hours to get to school once a month for a long weekend. And you allow yourself to actually have that experience. That's how the blueprint came to be, is letting go that old blueprint that we carry with us so that you can become who you were always meant to be. But we don't often know who that person is or what they're all about or even who we could be because we don't allow that to happen for ourselves.
I think it's beautiful that you went back and you really acknowledged like all the work that you put into that and you celebrated that. And because I think it's important. I know I'm guilty of just go, okay, did this. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing this.
Next. Yeah.
What's next? What's next? What's next? What's on the list? And that actually just happened last week. I flew to San Francisco. My new book just came out, and I am about to have an Uber. That's driving up. I've got my suitcases. I'm packing up everything at the last minute, and my assistant FaceTimes me. She's younger, and it's that FaceTime generation. She never calls, and I happened to be right in front of the computer, so I
You're like, what?
going like here. Yeah, I was like, "Hey, what do you need? What next? What do you need?" And she said, "Okay, I need you to video this." And I'm like, "Oh no, what did I do wrong?" Like my first thought was, "I'm in trouble. What did I do?"
Right.
And in the video, she goes, "Are you recording?" And I'm like, "Yes, what?" I was like, "What is going on? What is going on?" And she said, "You just got USA Today bestsellers list." And I just started crying. I was
Yeah.
crying like tears of gratitude and just, oh my gosh, all that hard work. And I can't believe this is happening. And I was like, oh my goodness, my Uber's here. Thank you for telling me. Okay, I got to go. And I look and my dog has chewed. I wondered why it was cutting in and out. My little cute nugget had chewed through my internet. And so my husband walks in my office and I'm holding the internet cable that is chewed. And I was like, hi, honey. I was like, guess what? I hit the bestseller list. I was like, but Nugget chewed through the internet. And he was just like cussing. He was like, oh my gosh, how could you not see that? I'm like, I was actually being told I got bestseller list. I wasn't paying attention to the dog under the desk. Rushed out, got in the Uber. In the Uber, I had two client, got to make the most of your time. So I had two client calls scheduled for talking to these clients on the way to the airport. So talk to the clients. I'm all focused on what they need. I'm serving them. I get to the airport. I get through TSA. I get on the airplane and get off the airplane. And two of the people that are at the event that I'm speaking at happen to be on the plane too, that were part of the event. And we're walking out, and the driver has a sign up that says, Amberly Lago, USA Today bestselling author. And they were like, oh my gosh, you got the USA Today list? And I was like, oh, yeah. And they're like, when'd you find out? I said, oh, I just found out. And they were like, have you celebrated? And I was like, no, like it hadn't even dawned on me. It was like, okay, did that next. And it really was a moment of talk about being in the present moment. Sometimes we need other people to knock us into reality of, hey, be right here, be where your feet are. You know what I mean? And so that event ended up being amazing. They had a book signing for me. They had it on the big screen that I was a bestseller. And so it reminded me of just how you celebrated that victory that you had, that hard work that paid off. It was like, we got to take time to celebrate those things.
Absolutely. Going back a little bit, you mentioned halt, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. I like adding bored into that because I think
Never been bored.
I know you haven't, but a lot of people have. And so for the people that are listening, if you find yourself in that place where you are bored, I think it's an interesting experience because I was thinking about my own coping mechanisms in that moment of what do I use? What do I do? A few years ago, I went to Nashville for Arate Syndicate to see Ed Milet and Andy Frisella. And that was like after my pivot out of law enforcement, starting a podcast and doing all of this and becoming a coach. So you make that pivot, you make that shift, and then you're sitting there with all these amazing people. There was over 2,500 easily
Oh, wow.
in that room for this experience. And of course, you feel the energy of the room, and then Ed and Andy come out, and they're just super high energy, and they're giving it to you, and they're telling you all these stories, and you sit there and you try to envision yourself up on that stage and that experience and what's going on. There were so many things that I hadn't let go of yet for myself, but there was a lot of light bulbs going off in that moment, not just from seeing all the different people up on stage, but also just the people in the room and hanging out with them and sharing our different experiences and seeing all the different levels where people are currently. It's just amazing that all these people came together for this single event and they traveled from all over the world, which was so cool for me because in that moment I felt so lonely. I just pivoted out of law enforcement. I've given up something that was important to me. I no longer have those same relationships because once you leave, it's like you never existed. Now you're in this new place and you're discovering pieces of yourself for the first time. And I think that's such an interesting experience to the degree that I found myself going to have a drink, right? It's typical. Go to Nashville, you have a drink. Why not? That was my last drink. It's now been 3
Really?
years, and in that 3-year period, I've been able to do all of this. Now, what have I done? Nothing significant, but I've been a
It
connector,
is?
and I bring people on the podcast, and we have these amazing conversations, and we share our experiences and stories of resilience and growth with one another, and people respond to that. And so I'm very much in that early stage, still growing, trying to figure out what's next. But how cool is it that we get to have these conversations and share our experiences with one another and build each other up in that process? And I can't,
Okay. I have to go back.
okay.
You said not significant. Can I just tell you, it is very significant because you have this is your 100 and I think what
First.
you said
Yeah.
101 episodes. That's amazing. Do you know that most got 12 episodes and quit?
Yeah.
And look at you. That's why you are so successful is because you stick to it and you've got that grit and then you keep going. And also congratulations on 3 years of no drinking. I think that getting in a room is powerful when you get around
Extremely.
people who are go-getters and they're passionate and they want to do big things and they're like-minded. It's really an opportunity to level up your mindset, level up your business, level up your life, and I think that's why people I don't know if everybody understands, like, just how getting in one room, having one conversation, having one collaboration, and it doesn't even have to be necessarily in the conference room, it can be in the bathroom.
Yeah.
No, some of the best deals are made in the back of the room, you know what I mean? And so I think that's amazing what you accomplished and what you are accomplishing and getting in the room. I remember can I tell you a quick story real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
So I had known Ed, we had shared the stage many times at events, but it's different when you're sharing the stage and you're in the green room and they're about to go on and you're about to go on and you get to talk, but it's not like sometimes it's not on a deeper level because it's just you're just going and you're next and they're next. And so anyway, I'd shared the stage with him. So we knew each other for a long time. And we were both speaking at an event. I think it was in Vegas. I don't remember where it was. And anyway, one of my friends was like, "Wow, you're going for all 3 days? Why are you going for 3 days? You're only speaking on that one day." And I was like, because relationships are everything and proximity is power. And I want to get to know people and make connections and build those relationships. And so I am so glad I did because that first night was the VIP night. And Ed and I ended up hanging out and really talking and connecting. And I never, ever, I'd always supported him. He'd been on my podcast. I always wanted to support his book and things like that. Never was I ever gonna ask him if I could be a guest on a show because I know he's got a million people pulling at him, and I was like, "I'm not gonna be that person. If ever the timing is right, then it'll happen." But, like, the next day, he called me and he was like, "Amberly, I want you to be on the show." I woke up and I thought, "I need to have Amberly on the show." And, yeah, I about dropped the phone because I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I'll be there when you
Of
need me.
course.
I'll be there." And so it was if I hadn't gotten in the room, I didn't have to be there a day early before I spoke. But because I did, I ended up being on a show. Maybe it would have happened later, but I really think it was because we got to really connect on a deeper level that night.
Yeah.
You never know who you're going to meet. We were just talking about Kelly Siegel before
Mhm.
we started recording. Kelly and I met on the podcast. He came to my annual event and I was able to introduce him to so many other people. Now, one of his best friends he met because he was a speaker at my event. So, getting in the room, you just meet the right people, you make the right collaborations. It's so important your inner circle, who you're hanging out with, who you're spending time with, makes such a big difference in your life.
I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think people understand the collaboration piece enough. Everybody has something to sell. They're all doing their own thing. They're all trying to be, maybe they want to be the next Ed Milet, whatever that means to them or wherever they're going with what they're doing. But you have to start somewhere. And a big piece of that is recognizing that you have to align yourself with people that are in alignment with your goals, your values, and your standards, and of course, your mission and your vision. When you do that, and you're not seeking to sell a product, you're not seeking to get something from them, you're literally doing it because we are in alignment and we're going to take this over. We are the next group of people that are going to do this, and it's going to be exciting, it's going to be fun, and we're going to tackle so many different things. That's where you need to be with all of this. I love that you said that proximity is power because it is. We think we don't belong in those rooms. You even said it. I don't want to be that person. And my question to you is, who is that person? What does that even mean?
That person that's, oh, just want to pick your brain. Okay. First of
Yeah.
all, don't tell people you want to pick their brain.
Yes.
If you really want to talk with someone, I would really highly suggest uh, reaching out to them on a DM and saying, "Hey, I love the work that you're doing. I've been following your journey for a long time. I listen to your podcast. I comment on every post. I'm a huge fan. Do you have 5 minutes for me to ask you a question that I have that's really important and it's about business? And I promise to only take 5 minutes of your time." Then more than likely, they're gonna get on a 5-minute call with you. But you have to be very direct. That person that is always asking for stuff, needing stuff, an energy vampire. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's somebody who they just want something from you, and every single time, even a friend that they're a friend that's reaching out to you in a text message, they want something from you because every time you hear from them, it's because they want something from you. And it's the only time you hear from them is because they want something from you. I don't approach my relationships like that. I've got great friends that it was even hard for me to ask, "Hey, do you think you could write praise for my book?" Now, I over the years had just been adding value as much as I could to them, never asked them for anything. So I felt, okay, now it's been years I've been helping other people support their books. I've been having them on my podcast. I've been having them on my stage at my annual event. But it was still hard for me to ask. And when I was on Ed's show, he's like, "Let me know. I wish your new book was out. I wish your new book was already out. We could promote that." He goes, "We'll have to have you back on the show. You
You're
just."
like, yes.
I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." He's like, "You just let me know what I can do for you." Do you know it was still hard for me to ask him to write praise for my book? And I was like, "Gosh, why is it so hard for me to ask?" And it's because I know he has a million people that pull on a million people that ask him a million different things. And so I just got really raw and vulnerable. And I was like, "Hey, you're the first person I'm reaching out to. You know how much I admire and respect you. This is really hard for me to ask. But if I make it really super easy for you, would you be willing to take a look at my book and write some praise for it?" And he said yes. And I was like, "Oh my God." I started crying. So then my next message to him was crying. I'm like, "And I'm crying. Thank you." Because I was so grateful. And I think it's important to show your gratitude. And I made sure to send a gift to every single person who wrote praise for my book, especially John Gordon, who wrote the foreword to the book. He's like I've got every single one of his books.
Isn't he on like book 5,000 at this point?
Yeah, book number 32 comes
Wow.
out in May. I've already pre-ordered it. Yeah, he's amazing. And when he said he would write the foreword, I was like, wow, you know what? It, it's a dream come true. Had I been the kind of person that was constantly asking for favors, asking for stuff, just there to pick his brain, I wasn't there. I'm not there to pick somebody's brain or to get something from them. I really genuinely wanted to build that relationship. And so when you work on the relationship and how you can serve and what value you can add, then usually that relationship thrives and something good comes out of it. Not that I was even looking for something good to come out of it. I wasn't looking for anything. At the time when I first met Ed and John, I didn't even know I was going to write another book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's very important.
I think it's important for people to, what I want you to get out of this is that you have to ask for what you want, and you have to be very clear and concise in what it is that what you want. And you can't have this fear or allow your lack of worthiness, that lack of self-worth to settle in and stop you from asking for what you want. Because if you don't ask, then you get nothing.
You
And
won't get it.
and
If
you
I
will
wouldn't
stay
have
exactly
asked,
where you are.
if I wouldn't have asked, it took courage to
It
ask
takes a
John
lot
to
of
write the
courage.
forward, especially because so I was at their house. We're close friends now, and I stay with them when I go to Florida, but I was at their house, and this is before I even had my book finished, but I knew I was writing it. And I knew that I wanted to ask John to write the forward. And we were sitting at breakfast and we're like checking our email and stuff. And I don't even know how we got on that subject, but he's, "Oh, yeah, I'm done writing forwards. I'm not writing anymore. I've got people that ask me all the time to write forwards. I'm not doing that anymore." And I was like, dang it.
Right.
Now's not the time to ask. So there's a timing for everything. So I let it go and I prayed about it. And I was like, oh, he's the one I want there to write the forward for the book. He's my favorite author. And I waited a little while and I called and he said yes. And I cried. I'm like, y'all are probably thinking, man, Amberly, you're just such a big crybaby. But it was like tears of gratitude, like
Right.
kind of surprise and gratitude. And yeah. And so there's a timing for asking too.
There is. And there's also the way that you phrase it. So I don't know Ed personally, obviously, but I've listened to enough of his stuff to know that what really probably tapped into it for him was it's really hard for me to ask. And I think that, again, I've just heard him so many times talk about stuff like this that it's like he probably really appreciated that level of honesty and that vulnerability that you gave to him in that moment. And it's a no-brainer with you. We hear your story and everything that you've done and just the challenges that you've gone through and the frameworks that you create and the way that you help other people. Of course he would help you. Of course John would write that forward. Why wouldn't they?
I tell you what, I don't take it lightly. I don't take it for granted. It means a lot.
And they know that.
It really means a lot. And I called them both to say, thank you so much for your support. I was like, look, because of y'all, I got on the bestseller list. And they both left me the sweetest messages. And Ed was like, just very kind. I feel so blessed and I don't take it for granted. I just feel honored about it.
I agree. Being able to connect with the people that you admire most it's such a blessing. And you don't realize it until it really happens and you start to immerse yourself in it and you're like, this is such a unique and valuable friendship. I don't think many of us have friendships like again, we're all connectors. We build each other up, we rise together, and we recognize that's how we all grow and we make ourselves better is by doing that, by that collaboration and by helping other people. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah. That's why like I love helping my mastermind members, and I don't just teach them how to give their talk on stage. I actually give them a platform. And at my Unstoppable Success Summit every year,
Mhm.
I have big name speakers that come and speak, but I also give my Unstoppable members a chance on stage to share a little bit about their message. And then they can say, hey, I shared the stage with Trent Shelton or John Gordon, who spoke last year. Renee
Uh-huh.
Rodriguez spoke last year. This year it's Renee Rodriguez. Oh, Renee Rodriguez is speaking this year. Ben Newman spoke last year. But I want to be able to give them and help them because sometimes that's all it takes is just that one conversation, that one opportunity, that one moment on stage for it to launch your life, to launch your career, to give you that boost in confidence.
And I will say, for those of you who are listening, if you've never heard those names before, I highly suggest that you go look each one of them up and give them a follow because all of them have such incredible value to give to you. And it is going to change your life and the way that you perceive yourself and your place in the world if you give it the right time and effort and the information. Now, I do want to leave people with some more actionable frameworks. You have the PACER method. Can you explain that to us, what it is?
Yeah, actually, that came about because my husband was giving me a hard time. He loves to give me a hard time. He loves to give me a hard time. And you know what? We have fun. But we were sitting at the dinner table and he looked at me and I had my leg propped up on the table. It was all swollen and I wasn't in a lot of pain. My eyes were bloodshot. I'd been going all day. And we were eating dinner. He goes, oh my gosh, you really need to pace yourself. And that word, I don't know. It was like when somebody tells you to calm down. I was a little annoyed. And I said, you know what? I do pace myself. And I do get through all these times. I am resilient because I do pace myself. And I got a dinner napkin and I started writing down everything I did throughout the day in order to be able to go give motivational talks, to take care of the kids. I prepared dinner, had homework done, and I came up with this method called PACE, and I wanted to just call it PACE, but I learned the hard way. I had to add the R on the end of it and call myself a pacer. And so this is what I use on a daily basis, still to this day, to be more resilient. And you can just remember the word pacer whenever you feel frustrated, sad, tired, lonely, whatever it is you can go through this framework. Now, PACER stands for perspective, acceptance, community, endurance, and rest. And perspective, the quickest way to shift your perspective, we talked about a little bit before, is gratitude.
Yeah.
And I start my day with that. I have a gratitude practice where I have ladies that we call ourselves the God Squad and we text each other our gratitude list every single day. And I end my day with gratitude. And I ask my daughter, what is the best thing that happened to you today? And what's one thing you're grateful for? And you know what? Sometimes tells me something goofy, but for the most part, she sees that, she hears it, and it is the best way to change the way you feel about your circumstances. So the easiest way to shift your perspective is with gratitude, and that will lead you into acceptance. Now, acceptance is the next part of PACER, and I think it's the beginning of any transformation. I was in denial for a long time. I didn't want to accept that my leg is scarred up from the hip down, that I was diagnosed with this incurable nerve disease, that I had become a full-blown alcoholic because of trying to cope with the pain and self-medicate. And it was when I got an acceptance and realized, oh my gosh, I had survived this near-death accident only to be slowly killing myself with alcohol. And I took a good hard look at my life and I got radically honest with myself and accepted the fact that I needed help, that I was able to get sober, that I had this nerve disease. Okay, these are the cards I've been dealt. It's up to me to play the hell out of these cards. That these are the scars, and started to accept them and look down at them as, wow, look at how the body can heal and look at all I've overcome, instead of looking at my leg with disgust. I could now look at it in a different way and accept it. That allowed me to connect with a different community, which is the next part of Pacer. And community is powerful. Just like you felt the energy and it shifted your life when you were in that room with Ed and Andy and all those 2,500 other people. Community's powerful, and if there's one thing you can take away from listening to our conversation today, it's let it be this, that you do not have to do it alone. I tried to do it alone, and it didn't work.
Man, don't do it.
Community is what yeah, I mean, it's allows me to stay sober.
Yeah.
I'm connected to my sober community. Entrepreneurship can be lonely, and so I don't wanna be lonely. I think that connection is the opposite of addiction. And so I've learned to take contrary action, whether that's in my sobriety, whether it's if I'm in pain. My tendency was to want to isolate. I reach out instead and ask how I can be of service to others and their success, because that's where fulfillment is. I had somebody say, "Well, you're lucky you have community." And I'm like, no, your hard work puts you where your blessings can find you. And so how can you add value? How can you be the most valuable person in your community? And that's what you said before, is making connections for others. And I used to try to think, oh, I can grit this out. I can do it on my own. No, yes, you're strong, but together, when we come together in entrepreneurship, whatever you're going through, it's powerful, and it allows you to have endurance. And that's the next part of Pacer. And that's where your passion and your perseverance come into play. It's where you focus on what you can do. It's where you focus on your why, because when you focus on your why, it activates the human spirit, it activates purpose, it activates your heart, and it allows you to get through hard times. Because when you're asking yourself what or how, it's in your head. But when you ask yourself why, it puts you in your heart. And I think that being an entrepreneur, it does take endurance, but it also takes rest is the last part, Pacer. And
That's your least favorite.
be- it is. I grew up an
Yeah.
athlete where it was like resting meant quitting. And I had to reframe that and make rest a part of my business strategy. And now it's like I monitor my sleep. I'm serious about my sleep. This morning I knew I was waking up and I needed to get my newsletter out, my posts out, because I'm doing a webinar tonight. And my first client started at 6 a.m. And then as right after that, right before this, I was on the news. And I was like, okay, I need to get to bed early. And my husband was like, oh, you're going to bed early. I'm like, it's actually not that early. And he's retired now. And I'm like, you can sleep to whenever. I'm like, I'm up at 4:30. So resting is important if I want my brain to work. And so resting, sometimes we have to think of things like strategically plan times to rest and recover. And that's throughout the day. Like, and you know what? I have to just share this with you really quick. So, for the first time in my life, it's amazing. I have an amazing assistant who actually puts in my calendar, because she knows that I don't like to rest, that I will just go until I'm on the ground. She puts in my calendar from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. That's my time. It's my morning ritual. It's my workout. It's my prayer. It's whatever I need to do. And yes, I know I did a client at 6 this morning. She's going to be upset about that. But she puts it in my calendar. She puts it in my calendar, like I've got a busy day. She will put in my calendar an hour in there, break, so no one can schedule
Good.
on there. So I've never had that before.
It's a whole
It's
different
unbelievable.
experience.
It is. I'm like, wow, she rescheduled something last week. And I thought I was going to have this 2-hour conference and she says, no, there was a mix up. That's your time. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to go to
Yeah.
the gym. This is amazing. And I'm like, she goes, that's how it should be. And I was like, oh yeah. So I'm human. I forget. I have to go back to being a pacer and break it down and remember to rest and remember to halt. And so I just share that with you because, man, I think we're all just trying to figure it out. And if anybody says they have it all figured out, then run because I use these things to help me, but I still mess up and I still have to go back to it
Yeah,
as a
and
reminder.
everybody's process is gonna look different, but I love the reset, that little break, you get a reset, it's like a whole other day after that because you've now given yourself a little bit of self-care, you've exercised, you've changed your physiological state, you've maybe done some
Yeah,
deep breathing, and now you're just ready to go for the next client, the next issue, the next problem, whatever is next, you're totally prepared for it.
exactly.
So, Amberly, you've built an incredible brand, a movement, and a message that impacts millions. But what still scares you? What's the next mountain you're climbing?
Oh, I get scared all the time. I get scared like daily. But you know what? I always say, I would always tell my clients, do something that
Yeah.
scares you every day because every time you do something that scares you, you get to build your confidence a little bit that, oh my goodness, I did that. I got through it. And so it allows you to go, okay, the next step and the next step. And I think for me, this is honestly the first time that I've ever been booked back to back. Like one week, there were 5 events in one week, which sounds crazy. And it was traveling that much to go speak. But I think the thing that scares me and excites me at the same time is speaking events that I have coming up. I still want to pee my pants every time before I get on stage, just to keep it real. So I do push ups and prayer. That's my ritual before I go. But it's getting on these bigger stages that I'm so grateful for, but it still scares me. So I think that's probably it. I've been on the news a lot lately for my book. Next week, I'll be in studio for NBC for the news. And that kind of excites me. You would think that would scare me, but I just am so passionate about I think about it's not about me, it's about the people I serve. And so every time I do get scared, especially before I'm going on stage, I'm like, wait, this isn't about me. That's being pretty selfish and all in my ego, and ego meaning edging God out when I'm making it about me and I'm scared. I have to think about, okay, no, I wrote this book because I want to share what has helped me and I know it can help others. I get on stage to share my message because I'm there to serve others. And so when I focus on that, then I'm not really scared anymore because it's not about me.
Amberly, I can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing all your wisdom, your knowledge, and your personal experiences with the Blueprint audience. Tell everybody how they can reach you and get your new book.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, amberlylago.com is where you can find my book, my upcoming event, the Unstoppable Success Summit, my mastermind, my free gifts, my online store.
Get it
It's
all.
all there. Get it all, or you can just go to Amazon and click Joy Through the Journey, and that's one click away. And what's crazy, I just looked on Amazon and I'm like, oh, my book's on sale. Like I have no idea when they're doing a sale or
Yeah.
anything like that. So you never know. But yeah, you can find everything there and reach out to me. My favorite thing to do is to connect with others. I can see why people love you and love your podcast because you're just so great and such a good interviewer, and I love your energy. So thank you so much for having
Thank
me
you
on.
for that. That's very kind. Thank you. That's still something I'm working through, is taking nice things and compliments from people. So
Oh,
so
you're
I
amazing.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
We don't
you're
get a lot of
amazing.
feedback in this space because I'm always talking to, I got a teleprompter and a camera in front of me, and you're over here, so I haven't seen you this entire time. It's funny. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, you're awesome. Thank you.